this is pretty consistent, shall we say, across both parties. They really don't like it when you waste our money. So people are looking at this and they're going, this is good. This is healthy. We like it. Well, most people, I mean, you look at 53% approval ratings and 70% of Americans saying, you know what, he's doing what he promised he would do. And then you go over to some publications like that little shop called CNN, which I think we're beating them on our live shows, guys. Like, we get better ratings over here on YouTube, and it's like just me and you, right? Like, we're beating CNN on most given days. Here's Caitlin Collins, who's been ridiculed for this very dramatic, oh my gosh, constitutional crisis comment.
We are 3 weeks into the second Trump presidency, 3 weeks, and tonight there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis.
Ooh, you scared yet? We are dangerously close to a constitutional crisis. It sounds like she was watching Letitia James's speech.
Not only does this administration's new policy put people at risk, but it is plainly unconstitutional. The president does not get to decide which laws to enforce and for whom. When Congress...
Yeah. Okay. Or maybe she just read the New York Times editorial that said, everybody, come on, we got to round them up. If Trump triggers a constitutional crisis, which Caitlin Collins and CNN say we are very, very near, well, then no part of society can remain silent. What exactly do they think is happening right now? Because he's going through and he's exposing the graft, like that is somehow not constitutional. The Wall Street Journal had a good take on this one, writing in an op-ed, is this a constitutional crisis? Trump's actions? Yeah, sure. They're aggressive, but they aren't an executive coup, okay? Not the way the mainstream media. I mean, maybe it's a coup to the mainstream media because they're going to lose their millions of dollars. What was it? $52 million that Associated Press was getting. That's the latest and greatest that has just been discovered by none other than Doge. I wonder how much CNN was getting. Maybe they're paying for Caitlin's salary. Well, the Wall Street Journal writes, look, the same people who predicted Donald Trump would be a dictator now say a constitutional crisis has already arrived, barely 3 weeks into his presidency. They're overwrought as usual, and readers may appreciate a less apoplectic breakdown about Mr. Trump's actions and whether they do or not breach the normal checks and balances. The conclusion from the Wall Street Journal is no, they absolutely don't. This is not one of those moments where you need to panic. And, after a while, if you keep telling everyone it's time to panic, it's time to panic, it's time to panic, don't you become the little boy who cried wolf? Spirit-filled, thank you for your generosity. Appreciate it. And I'm always here to report the truth. Listen, they wear out their welcome. I mean, it's what happened with all of the lawfare, for example. At some point, we couldn't even keep them all straight, right? It was like, oh, they're going after Trump again for this, that, and the other nonsense. And nothing was sticking. Well, the Wall Street Journal writes the first category, if you think about it, in terms of spending, includes the administration's decision to pause discretionary spending. Well, guess what? The president absolutely has every bit of authority to pause discretionary spending. And in fact, many presidents have done it before. It's exactly what Biden did. Did everybody freak out like this? No. But, I guess Biden wasn't pausing the USAID spending that was going to the likes of AP, the BBC, Politico, and the New York Times. So this article goes on, and they sort of explain that this is just absolutely over the top. It is totally ridiculous to think that this is some kind of coup or constitutional crisis. But you know what? This is what the media does, right? Like, we've been there, done that. And I think everybody is pretty darn sick and tired of it. Frankly, it's why you're over here. Reminder, of course, make sure that you subscribe, share, like, make a comment, all that stuff, because I'll tell you, every bit helps. And it's because of outlets like this, because of, say, my podcast and other podcasts where you're seeking out the truth, you're actually hearing it and you're able to make informed decisions. Again, I go back to the importance of leadership in terms of X allowing all this information to get out there. And here, I'm on YouTube and fortunately am able to connect with all of you guys. You see a lot of transition happening, for example, over at Meta, because they're realizing this wasn't really the way to do it. They shouldn't do it like that, because if you don't have free speech, what do you have, right? Well, Constitutional crisis. This is the concern, okay? Letitia James says we're going towards a constitutional crisis, and the New York Times and CNN, they all agree with her. A constitutional crisis. Because what? The federal government's actually going to control its borders? I'm sorry, Tishy. You know what? New York has to get with the program. She tweets out that it has laws that protect immigrants and limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement officials. Those laws should be followed by law enforcement and officials in our state. But you see, the federal government has a little bit of a problem with that, because these green light laws that allow for people who are here illegally in the country to go and get driver's license from the DMV, well, that kind of stands in the face or sort of flaunts the sort of challenge of the federal government needing to actually know who's in the country and control its borders. And by the way, they have total jurisdiction over that. You can take that one all the way to the Supreme Court. And by the way, I think they will. That's one where, I'm sorry, but the federal government all day long trumps New York and Letitia James and Pam Bondi, our new AG under Donald Trump. She knows it.
And if you don't comply with federal law, we will hold you accountable. We did it to Illinois. Strike one. Strike two is New York. And if you are a state not complying with federal law, you're next. Get ready. And the great men and women of law enforcement are standing behind me today. We have FBI, DEA, ATF agents. They put their lives on the line every single day to protect us. And what New York has, they have green light laws, meaning they're giving a green light to any illegal alien in New York where law enforcement officers cannot check their identity if they pull them over. Law enforcement officers do not have access to their background. And if these great men and women pull over someone and don't have access to their background, they have no idea who they're dealing with. And it puts their lives on the line every single day. Violent criminals, gang members, drug traffickers, human smugglers will no longer terrorize the American people. And that is why we are here today. You will be held accountable if you do not follow federal law. It's over, it ends, and we're coming after you.
Did you hear that, Tish? She's coming after you. She's going after the governor of New York. She's going after the head of the DMV. And she has every right to do so. Article 1. Section 8, Clause 4. This is what enables the federal government. Well, you could argue that the Commerce Clause also gives them this ability, but it's spelled right out. They control borders. They control immigration. That is all the federal government, no matter what these idiots are trying to tell you. I mean, the same idiots that want to spend billions of dollars all around the world for DEI and trans efforts. I'm like, why? Like, why? You got people in North Carolina, you got people in California with the fires and now the earthquakes, and you got people in Florida, right, that lost everything. You don't think it's smart to maybe direct some of those resources to back here at home in the good old US of A? No, they don't.
A real constitutional crisis is taking place within our judicial branch, where district court judges in liberal districts across the country are abusing their power to unilaterally block President Trump's basic executive authority. We believe these judges are acting as judicial activists rather than honest arbiters of the law, and they have issued at least 12 injunctions against this administration in the past 14 days, often without citing any evidence or grounds for their lawsuits. This is part of a larger concerted effort by Democrat activists and nothing more than the continuation of the weaponization of justice against President Trump. Quick news flash to these liberal judges who are supporting their obstructionist efforts. 77 million Americans voted to elect this president. And each injunction is an abuse of the rule of law and an attempt to thwart the will of the people. As the president clearly stated in the Oval Office yesterday, we will comply with the law in the courts, but we will also continue to seek every legal remedy to ultimately overturn these radical injunctions and ensure President Trump's policies can be enacted.
Gosh, she's good. It got refreshing after having to deal with KJP for the last 4 years, nearly. I mean, it was Peppermint Patty before her. But wow, I mean, she's really, really good. And she's on her game, and she's not messing around. And so she's like, you want to find a real constitutional crisis? I can show you a real constitutional crisis.